In a previous video, we talked about how to read graphs, and today I want to talk about another key piece of information that you can extract from graphs, the gradient. The gradient of a graph is basically just how steep the line is, and put more properly, it tells us what the rate of change of the variables are relative to one another. A steep line means that the y variable changes a lot as the x variable changes. It's got a large gradient. And conversely, a shallow line like this tells us that the y variable doesn't really change very much as the x variable changes, so this will have a small gradient. Now the gradient is actually a number that we can calculate fairly easily. All you've got to do is pick 2 points on the line like this, and you divide the change in the y values by the change in the x values. So here, for example, I've chosen these 2 points here. I can see that the y values goes from 3 to 7, and the x values go from 2 to 10. So the y values change by 4, 3 to 7 is 4. The x values change by 8, 2 to 10 is 8. So the change in y values divided by the change in x values, 4 divided by 8 gives me half, or 0.5. So the gradient of this graph is 0.5. Now you can choose any 2 points on the line really, but to be as accurate as possible, you want to make the triangle that we're drawing here as big as we possibly can. In fact, lots of exams won't give you any marks, even if you get the gradient right, if you use a small triangle. So you really want to make the biggest possible triangle you can. And finally, I just want to touch on curved lines. How could I find the gradient of a curved line? Well, it's quite tricky to find the gradient of this whole line at once, but I can find the gradient of any point on that line by drawing a tangent. So a tangent is a straight line that only touches the curve in one place without crossing it. So it just grazes up against the curve. So here's an example of a curve, and if I wanted to find the gradient at that point there, I would draw a straight line like this. That is a tangent to the line at that point. And then once you've done that, all you've got to do is find the gradient of that tangent that you've drawn in exactly the same way that we did before. You just take 2 points, do the change in y divided by the change in x. So that's gradients. Super simple, but super useful, very, very important, and a super common exam question as well.